The message came without warning, without mercy. Kneel or be erased. 4 words that flickered across every communication device on Earth. 4 words that sealed humanity's fate, or so the Empire believed. General Marcus Carson stood in the dimly lit war room of Enceladus Base, staring at the projected hologram of Earth. His weathered face, marked with scars from battles long past, remained expressionless as he absorbed the gravity of what had just happened. Around him, his officers waited in tense silence. No one dared speak first. The Empire had finally done it, issued an ultimatum that could no longer be ignored. "How long do we have?" Carson finally asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. Lieutenant Sarah Braddock, his loyal second-in-command for over a decade, stepped forward. 72 hours, sir. After that, they begin systematic bombardment of major cities. Carson nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving the holographic projection. Earth, once vibrant and full of promise, now shadowed by the Empire's massive ships hovering in low orbit. He could make out the silhouettes of the Imperial destroyers, their menacing forms blocking sunlight from reaching the surface in some areas. For years, the Empire had been tightening its grip on humanity, infiltrating governments, controlling resources, and eliminating resistance. This ultimatum was merely the final step in a long process of subjugation. "The Earth governments?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. "Most have signaled compliance, sir," Braddock replied, disgust evident in her voice. "The Imperial puppets in the United World Council are drafting surrender terms as we speak." Carson closed his eyes briefly. Betrayal. Always betrayal. First his family, murdered by Imperial agents when he refused to cooperate. Then his government, slowly capitulating to the Empire's demands. And now, Earth itself was preparing to kneel. But not everyone would kneel. "It's time," he said, opening his eyes with newfound resolve. "Activate Protocol Lazarus." The officers exchanged glances. Protocol Lazarus was not just a military operation. It was an act of defiance that would make them enemies of both the Empire and Earth's puppet governments. It meant war on all fronts with almost no chance of survival. "Sir," Commander Jackson spoke up, his face pale. "Protocol Lazarus has never been tested. The ships haven't been properly—" "I know what my ships can do." "Commander," Carson cut him off sharply. "I designed half of them myself when I still believed Earth would fight back." He turned to face his officers, his gaze intense. "Make no mistake, this is not a battle we are likely to win. But it is a battle that must be fought. The Empire believes humanity will surrender without resistance. We're going to show them how wrong they are." He moved to the central console and entered his authorization code. The holographic display shifted, revealing the hidden fleet, ships that had been decommissioned, abandoned, or secretly built over the years. Ships that officially didn't exist. The Black Fleet. 72 hours, Carson repeated. "That's how long we have to gather our forces and strike. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we make damn sure they remember the day they demanded Earth's surrender." As his officers dispersed to carry out their orders, Carson remained alone in the war room. He stared at the projection of Earth, remembering the day 15 years ago when the first Imperial scouts had arrived. They had come bearing gifts of technology and knowledge, promising peace and prosperity. By the time humanity realized the true cost of these gifts, it was too late. The Empire had already embedded itself too deeply, but not everywhere, not on Enceladus. Saturn's icy moon, where Carson and other military leaders had established a base hidden from the Empire's sensors. Here, they had gathered and prepared, watching as Earth slowly surrendered its freedom piece by piece. Carson pulled up another display, the face of Admiral Reyna Lockhart, once his closest friend and ally, now the Empire's most decorated human officer. Her betrayal had cut deeper than any other. They had trained together, fought together, sworn to protect Earth together. Now she commanded the Imperial forces that would enforce Earth's surrender. "You should have killed me when you had the chance, Reyna," he whispered to her image. "Because I'm coming for you now." With a flick of his hand, he dismissed the hologram and turned toward the door. The Black Fleet was about to emerge from the shadows, and humanity's last stand would begin. In the 15 years since the Empire's arrival, Enceladus had been transformed from a barren moon into a hidden fortress. Beneath its icy surface lay a network of tunnels and caverns housing not only a military base, but an entire community of refugees, scientists, and soldiers who had escaped Earth as the Empire's influence grew. Lieutenant Braddock walked briskly through these tunnels, heading toward the hangar bay where the first of the Black Fleet's ships were being prepared for deployment. Around her, the base hummed with activity as personnel rushed to their stations. The news of Protocol Lazarus spreading quickly. She found Carson inspecting the Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had once been the pride of Earth's Space Force before being officially scrapped and secretly transported to Enceladus. The ship's hull was now painted matte black, designed to absorb rather than reflect sensor scans. "General," she called, approaching with a data pad in hand. "We've received responses from our cells throughout the system. Ceres Station is with us. So are the Martian colonies and the miners in the asteroid belt. Europa base is still silent." Carson nodded, running his hand along the Defiance's hull. Europa was always a risk, too close to the Empire's Jupiter outpost. "What about our agents on Earth?" "Mixed responses," Braddock admitted. "Many are in position and ready to sabotage Imperial installations when we give the signal. Others have gone dark, either captured or they've chosen to surrender." "And the weapons?" Braddock hesitated. "The prototypes are operational but unstable. Dr. Hammond says they haven't been properly tested." Carson's face hardened. "We don't have time for proper testing. Lieutenant, the Empire gave us 72 hours. We'll be ready in 48. Sir, with all due respect, rushing this operation could..." "It could what?" Carson turned to face her fully. "Get us all killed? We're already dead. Sarah, the moment we decided not to kneel, we signed our death warrants. The only question now is how many of them we take with us." Braddock straightened her posture. "Yes, sir. What are your orders?" "Prepare the fleet for departure. I want all ships ready in 24 hours. And get me Dr. Hammond. If his weapons aren't ready, I need to know now." As Braddock left, Carson returned his attention to the Defiance. The ship represented everything the Black Fleet stood for: outdated, outgunned, but unbowed. They were relics of a time when humanity believed it could stand on its own in the vastness of space. Now they would serve one final purpose: to show the Empire that humans died on their feet, not on their knees. His comm unit buzzed, and he activated it to see Commander Jackson's face. "General, we've intercepted a transmission from the Eternal Verdict," Jackson reported, referring to the Empire's massive flagship that had recently entered Earth orbit. "Admiral Lockhart is addressing the United World Council." "Put it through," Carson ordered, his jaw tightening at the mention of Reyna's name. The holographic display flickered, and Reyna's face appeared. Still beautiful, still proud, but now bearing the insignia of the Empire on her uniform. Behind her stood a tall, gaunt figure that Carson recognized as Judicator Orin, the Empire's representative on Earth. "People of Earth," Reyna began, her voice calm and authoritative. The Galactic Empire has extended its hand in friendship for 15 years. We have shared technology, medicine, and knowledge. We have lifted humanity from its primitive state and offered it a place in our civilization. Yet pockets of resistance persist, threatening the peace and stability we have worked so hard to achieve. She paused, and Carson could see the practiced sincerity in her eyes that had once looked at him with genuine warmth and loyalty. The Empire's patience has limits, she continued. The ultimatum you have received is not a threat but a promise. In 72 hours, Earth will officially join the Empire as a protected territory. Those who accept this new reality will prosper. Those who resist. She let the implication hang in the air. The choice is simple. Kneel and live in peace. Resist and face extinction. The transmission ended, and Carson found himself staring at empty space. 15 years ago, he and Reyna had stood together as Earth's defenders, prepared to give their lives to protect their planet from any threat. Now she spoke of kneeling as if it were a gift. His comm unit buzzed again. "General," Braddock's voice came through, "Dr. Hammond is waiting for you in Lab 4. Carson acknowledged and headed toward the research section of the base. As he walked, personnel saluted him with a mixture of respect and fear. They knew what Protocol Lazarus meant. They knew what they were about to face. Lab 4 was a hive of activity when Carson arrived. Scientists and engineers moved frantically between workstations, making final adjustments to what appeared to be standard missile casings. But Carson knew they were anything but standard. Dr. Elias Hammond, a brilliant physicist who had fled Earth when the Empire began restricting scientific research, looked up from his work as Carson entered. His face was haggard from lack of sleep, but his eyes burned with intensity. "General," Hammond greeted him, wiping his hands on his lab coat. "I assume Lieutenant Braddock informed you of our concerns." "She did," Carson replied, moving to examine one of the missiles. "Tell me the truth, Doctor. Will they work?" Hammond ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "The seed technology is unpredictable. We reverse-engineered it from captured Imperial tech, but there are aspects we still don't fully understand. The seed was the Empire's most insidious weapon, not a conventional explosive, but a device that attacked the mind, breaking down resistance and implanting absolute loyalty to the Empire. It was how they had conquered countless worlds without reducing them to rubble. Earth's leaders had been among the first exposed to it. Our version is crude by comparison," Hammond continued. "Instead of submission, it induces chaos, temporarily disrupting the neural patterns that the Empire uses to maintain control. In theory, it should free those under Imperial influence for a short period." "How short?" Carson asked. "Hours, perhaps a day at most. After that, the Empire's conditioning reasserts itself." Hammond hesitated. "There's also a significant risk of permanent damage." Carson nodded grimly. "Mass insanity instead of mass subjugation, not ideal, but it gives us a window." "There's more," Hammond said, lowering his voice. "The counterseed requires a living host to activate the dispersal pattern. Someone whose neural pathways have been mapped to the exact frequency needed to trigger the cascade." Carson stared at him. "You're saying someone has to sacrifice themselves to activate each device?" "Yes, a willing sacrifice with full knowledge of what they're doing. Otherwise, the pattern collapses." Hammond looked away. "I volunteered myself for the prototype." "No," Carson said firmly. "You're too valuable, Doctor. We need your mind intact." He paused, considering. "I'll do it." Hammond shook his head. "It doesn't work that way. General, the neural mapping is specific to each device. We've already mapped volunteers for all 30 units. They're preparing themselves." Carson felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. 30 volunteers, ready to give not just their lives but their minds, their very sense of self, for a chance to free Earth. He wondered how many of them had families, dreams, futures they were sacrificing. "Is there no other way?" he asked quietly. "We've tried everything," Hammond replied. "This is the price of fighting the Empire on its own terms." Carson nodded slowly. "Then make sure their sacrifices count. Doctor, I want these weapons ready for deployment in 24 hours. As he left the lab, Carson's comm unit buzzed once more. "General," came Jackson's urgent voice, "we've detected Imperial ships breaking orbit around Jupiter. They're heading this way." Carson's blood ran cold. "How many?" "A small scouting force, 3 destroyers." "They can't have discovered us," Carson muttered, more to himself than to Jackson. "Not yet. Sir, if they maintain their current course, they'll be within sensor range of Enceladus in 18 hours. Carson quickened his pace toward the command center. "Accelerate the launch preparations. We move in 12 hours. Protocol Lazarus was being forced into action ahead of schedule. The Black Fleet would have to emerge before it was fully ready, before all ships were operational, before all weapons were tested, before all crews were prepared. But perhaps surprise would work in their favor. The Empire wasn't expecting resistance, let alone an organized fleet. If they struck now, while Reyna and the Imperial forces were focused on Earth's surrender, they might just have a chance. A small chance. But sometimes a small chance was all you needed to change the course of history. 12 hours later, the Black Fleet emerged from its hidden docks beneath Enceladus's icy surface. 27 ships in total, a motley collection of cruisers, destroyers, and frigates that had been salvaged, rebuilt, and modified over 15 years of preparation. Their hulls were painted the same matte black as the Defiance, making them nearly invisible against the darkness of space. Carson stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as his fleet assembled in formation. Each ship represented years of secret work, countless sacrifices, and hope kept alive in the face of overwhelming odds. "All ships reporting ready, General," Braddock announced from her station. "Combat systems online, stealth protocols engaged." Carson nodded, taking in the view of his assembled forces. It was an impressive sight, despite being hopelessly outmatched by the Empire's vast armada. But they weren't trying to win a conventional war, just to strike a blow that would be remembered. "What's the status of the Imperial scout ships?" he asked. "Still on approach, sir. Estimated arrival at Enceladus in 6 hours. They show no signs of having detected us yet." Carson turned to face his bridge crew. These men and women had given up everything to be here. Their homes, their families, their future on Earth. They deserved honesty. "I won't lie to you," he began, his voice carrying throughout the bridge. "What we're about to do may be remembered as either humanity's finest hour or its last act of defiance. The odds are against us. The Empire has more ships, more weapons, and more soldiers than we could ever hope to match. But they've never faced humans who refuse to surrender." He moved to the central display, bringing up an image of Earth surrounded by Imperial ships. "Our mission is simple but not easy. We strike at the heart of the Empire's occupation force, the Eternal Verdict. We deploy the seed weapons to disrupt their control over Earth's leaders, and we show the Empire that conquering humanity will cost them more than they're willing to pay." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, determination evident on their faces. "Lieutenant Braddock, signal the fleet. Set course for Earth. Maximum stealth protocols until we clear Saturn's orbit." Carson's eyes narrowed as he gave the order that would begin humanity's last stand. "The Black Fleet rises today, As the ships moved into position, Carson's thoughts turned to Reyna. Would she be surprised to see him? Would she understand what had driven him to this point? Or had the Empire's influence corrupted her so completely that she would see only an enemy to be destroyed? He didn't have much time to dwell on these questions. The fleet was now in motion, accelerating away from Enceladus and toward the inner solar system, toward Earth, toward either victory or annihilation. The journey to Earth would take approximately 30 hours at their current speed, a necessity to maintain stealth. That gave them time to finalize their battle plans and prepare the seed weapons for deployment. It also gave Carson time to record his final message. In his private quarters aboard the Defiance, Carson sat before a recording device. For several minutes, he simply stared at it, gathering his thoughts. What did you say when you might be recording humanity's epitaph? Finally, he activated the device. My name is General Marcus Carson of the Earth Defense Force, a force that officially no longer exists. If you're seeing this message, then the Black Fleet has engaged the Empire in what may be humanity's final battle for freedom. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 15 years ago, the Empire came to Earth bearing gifts and promises. They offered technology beyond our understanding, medicine that could cure our diseases and knowledge that could solve our problems. All they asked in return was our cooperation, our resources, and eventually our sovereignty. His expression hardened. What they didn't tell us was that their gifts came with hidden costs. Their technology contained monitoring devices that tracked our every move. Their medicine altered our biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. And their knowledge was carefully curated to make us dependent on them. Carson leaned forward. But worst of all was the seed, a technology that alters neural pathways, making those exposed to it compliant and loyal to the Empire. Earth's leaders were the first targets. One by one, they began to advocate for closer ties with the Empire, for acceptance of imperial authority, for the very surrender of our planet. He stood and moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars streaking by. The Black Fleet represents those who refuse to be altered, who refuse to surrender their humanity. We are the last free humans in the solar system, and we go now to face an enemy that has conquered 1,000 worlds before ours. Turning back to the recording device, Carson's face showed a resolve that came from knowing your path, however terrible it might be. I don't know if we will succeed. The odds suggest we won't. But I know this. Humans do not kneel, not to tyrants, not to conquerors, and certainly not to an empire that demands our submission through mind control and threats. His voice grew stronger. If we fall today, remember us not as rebels or terrorists, as the Empire will surely name us, but as the last free voices of humanity. And if somehow you are seeing this after we've succeeded, if the seed weapons have freed you from imperial control, then know that your fight is just beginning. The Empire will not stop with one defeat. They will return, stronger and more determined than before. Carson's eyes blazed with intensity. But so will humanity, because that is who we are. We rise, we fight, we survive, and we never ever kneel. With that, he ended the recording and had it transmitted to secure receivers across the solar system. Set to activate only if specific conditions were met, either the success of their mission or the destruction of the Black Fleet. As the message was being encrypted and transmitted, Carson's comm unit activated. "General," came Braddock's voice, "we have a situation. The Imperial scout ships have changed course. They're heading directly for our previous position on Enceladus." Carson frowned. "They couldn't have detected us. We were too careful." "It appears they received new orders from Earth, sir, from the Eternal Verdict." A cold realization washed over Carson. We have a leak. Someone transmitted our location. He quickly moved toward the door. I'm coming to the bridge. Increase speed and prepare for possible engagement. We may have lost the element of surprise. By the time Carson reached the bridge, the situation had deteriorated further. The scout ships had discovered the abandoned base on Enceladus and were now in pursuit of the Black Fleet. They're gaining on us, sir, reported the tactical officer. At current speeds, they'll be in weapons range in 3 hours. Carson studied the tactical display. 3 Imperial destroyers against his entire fleet might seem like favorable odds, but Imperial ships were technologically superior in every way. Engaging them would not only risk casualties, but would alert the main Imperial force to their approach. Options? He asked his officers. Commander Jackson spoke first. We could detach a small force to delay them while the main fleet continues to Earth. A suicide mission, Braddock pointed out quietly. We could attempt to outrun them, offered the navigation officer. Increase to maximum speed. And burn through our stealth capabilities, Carson countered. We'd be visible to every Imperial sensor in the system. The bridge fell silent as the officers contemplated their limited choices. Then the communications officer spoke up. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead Imperial ship. They're demanding our surrender. Carson's lips thinned into a grim line. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an Imperial captain, one of the non-human species that made up the Empire's officer corps. His elongated features and pale, almost translucent skin marked him as Seraphian, one of the Empire's oldest client races. Unidentified vessels, the captain began, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic quality of his species. You have violated Imperial decree by operating military spacecraft without authorization. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Carson stepped forward. This is General Marcus Carson of the Earth Defense Force. We recognize no Imperial authority over Earth or its citizens. Stand down and allow us to pass, or face the consequences. The Seraphian's expression didn't change. His species was known for their limited emotional display, but his tone hardened. General Carson, you are listed as a terrorist and enemy of the Empire. Your capture is a priority. I repeat, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Carson cut the transmission with a gesture. Well, that settles it. They know who we are and they're not backing down. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare a targeting solution for all 3 ships. Focus fire on the lead vessel first. Sir, Braddock intervened, if we engage now, we lose any chance of surprise when we reach Earth. We lost that chance the moment they discovered Enceladus, Carson replied grimly. But we can still control how this plays out. He faced his bridge crew. New plan. The Defiance will break formation and engage the Imperial ships directly. The rest of the fleet will continue to Earth at maximum speed. General, Jackson protested, that's a necessary sacrifice. Carson cut him off. The Defiance is the most combat-ready ship we have. We can hold them off long enough for the rest of you to reach Earth and complete the mission. The bridge fell silent again, the weight of his decision hanging in the air. Lieutenant Braddock, Carson continued, you'll transfer to the Retribution and take command of the fleet. Your primary objective remains unchanged. Reach Earth, deploy the seed weapons, and target the Eternal Verdict. Braddock stood rigidly at attention, her face a mask of professional composure despite the emotion Carson knew she must be feeling. Sir, request permission to remain aboard the Defiance. Carson shook his head. Denied, Lieutenant. The fleet needs your leadership. He softened his tone slightly. This isn't the end, Sarah. It's just the beginning of the fight. After a moment, Braddock nodded. Yes, sir, I understand. Good. Prepare for transfer immediately. We'll engage the Imperial ships as soon as you're safely away. As the bridge crew rushed to implement his orders, Carson returned his attention to the tactical display. The 3 Imperial destroyers were closing fast, their superior engines allowing them to gain ground rapidly. He estimated they had less than 2 hours before engagement, barely enough time to get Braddock and the command codes transferred to the Retribution. This wasn't how he had imagined the battle would begin. He had hoped to reach Earth with his full force intact, to strike before the Empire could respond. Now he would be lucky if even a portion of his fleet made it through. But then, luck had never been on humanity's side in this fight. Only determination and the willingness to sacrifice had kept them in the game this long, and if his sacrifice would give the rest of the fleet a chance to complete their mission, then it was worth making. As Carson prepared for battle, he couldn't help but wonder if Reyna would be the one to receive the report of his death. Would she feel anything? Regret? Satisfaction? Or had the Empire stripped away even her capacity for such human emotions? He would likely never know. His path was set now, as was hers. All that remained was to see it through to the end. The transfer of command took less than an hour. Braddock departed with a salute and a promise. "We'll complete the mission, sir. The Empire will remember this day." Carson watched from the Defiance's viewport as the Retribution and the rest of the Black Fleet accelerated away, pushing their engines to maximum as they raced toward Earth. Then he turned his attention to the approaching Imperial ships. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered. "Weapon systems online, target the lead destroyer." The Defiance came about, its engines flaring as it moved to intercept the Imperial vessels. It was a beautiful ship, Carson thought, not as sleek or advanced as Imperial designs, but solid, dependable, built by human hands for human purposes. A fitting vessel for humanity's defiance. "Sir, the Imperial ships are within range," reported the tactical officer. "They're charging weapons." "Hold fire until my command," Carson replied, studying the tactical display. The lead destroyer was slightly ahead of the others, creating a potential vulnerability. "Adjust course to bring us between the lead ship and its companions. Let's see if we can force them to hesitate for fear of hitting each other." The Defiance surged forward, its maneuvering thrusters firing as it positioned itself precisely where Carson wanted it, directly in the line of fire between the Imperial vessels. "They're targeting us, sir. Multiple weapons locks." Carson's hands gripped the command rail tightly. "Now, Lieutenant. Fire everything we have." The Defiance shuddered as its main batteries unleashed a barrage of fire, focusing on the lead destroyer. The black of space lit up with the flash of energy weapons and missile contrails as both sides opened fire simultaneously. The lead Imperial ship took heavy damage to its forward sections, its shields flaring and then failing under the concentrated assault. But the Defiance didn't escape unscathed. Imperial weapons fire struck its port side, tearing through armor plating and exposing several decks to vacuum. "Damage report," Carson called out as the ship rocked from another impact. "E-port sections 5 through 9 compromised," came the immediate response. "We've lost the port side missile batteries, shields down to 30%. Carson nodded grimly. The Defiance was a tough ship, but it wasn't designed to withstand sustained fire from 3 Imperial destroyers. This would be a short battle. "He'd bring us around for another pass," he ordered. "Target their propulsion systems this time. Let's see if we can cripple at least one of them." As the Defiance swung about, Carson checked the tactical display again. The rest of the Black Fleet was now well away, accelerating toward Earth. Good. His sacrifice was buying them the time they needed. The ship shook violently as another Imperial salvo struck home. "Its shields failing. Sir, Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Engineering reports the main reactor is taking damage. Carson held onto his command station as the deck lurched beneath him. Status of the Imperial vessels? The lead ship is heavily damaged but still operational. The other two are maintaining distance and continuing to fire. Another explosion rocked the ship, more violent than before. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power systems failed. Reactor breach imminent, reported the engineering officer, his voice steady despite the dire news. We have minutes at most, sir. Carson looked around at his bridge crew, men and women who had followed him into a hopeless battle without hesitation. They deserved better than this end, but they had known the risks when they joined the Black Fleet. Evacuate all personnel to escape pods, he ordered. Set course for the lead Imperial vessel and engage autopilot. We're going to take at least one of them with us. As the crew rushed to comply, Carson moved to the command console and entered his authorization code. The ship's computer acknowledged his commands, plotting a collision course with the damaged Imperial destroyer. General, the tactical officer called out. You should know, the Imperial ships are launching boarding parties. They're trying to capture the ship, not destroy it. Carson's expression hardened. Of course, the Empire would want to capture an intact human warship, and especially its commanding officer, to extract information about the rest of the fleet. All the more reason to make sure they don't get what they want, he replied. Initiate self-destruct sequence. Authorization Carson Alpha 79. The computer acknowledged the command, beginning the countdown. 10 minutes until the Defiance's reactor would overload, taking the ship and anything near it into oblivion. Sir, the escape pods are launching now, reported the communications officer. Most of the crew has evacuated. Good, Carson nodded. The rest of you should join them, though that's an order. The remaining bridge officers hesitated, looking to their commander. Go, Carson insisted. Someone needs to tell the story of what happened here, make sure the truth reaches Earth. One by one, they complied, saluting before leaving the bridge. Only Lieutenant Amir, the tactical officer, remained. Sir, with respect, you'll need someone to help repel boarders until the self-destruct sequence completes, he said firmly. Carson considered arguing but recognized the determination in the young officer's eyes. Very well, Lieutenant. Grab a weapon. We have Imperial visitors to greet. They didn't have to wait long. The sound of cutting tools against the sealed bridge doors told them the Imperial boarding party had arrived. Carson and Amir positioned themselves behind tactical consoles. Pulse rifles aimed at the entrance. The doors burst open in a shower of sparks, and Imperial troops poured onto the bridge, humanoid figures in sleek armor, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. Carson and Amir opened fire immediately, their pulse rifles cutting down the first wave of boarders. But more followed, using their fallen comrades as shields as they advanced. A bolt of energy struck Amir in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell, his rifle clattering to the deck. Carson continued firing, but it was a losing battle. A stun blast caught him in the chest, sending him sprawling. His vision blurred as Imperial troops surrounded him. One of them stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal the elongated features of a Seraphian officer. The captain from the lead destroyer. A General Carson, he said, his voice carrying that strange harmonic quality. The Empire has been searching for you for a long time. Carson managed a pained smile. Sorry to disappoint you, Captain, but you won't be taking me anywhere. He glanced at the countdown displayed on his wrist device. In fact, none of us will be leaving this ship alive. The Seraphian's eyes widened as he noticed the countdown. Evacuate, he shouted to his troops. The ship is set to self-destruct. As the Imperial soldiers scrambled to retreat, Carson dragged himself to Amir's side. The young officer was still breathing, though his wound was severe. "You should have gone with the others, Lieutenant," Carson said softly. Amir coughed, blood speckling his lips. "No regrets, sir. We did what had to be done." Carson nodded, watching as the countdown approached 0. In his mind, he saw Earth as it once was, free, proud, the home of a species that reached for the stars not out of conquest but curiosity. That Earth might be gone forever, but perhaps the Black Fleet could still ignite a spark of resistance. "For Earth," he whispered as the countdown reached its end. The Defiance erupted in a massive explosion, taking with it not only Carson and Amir, but the damaged Imperial destroyer caught in the blast radius. The sacrifice of one ship and its brave crew had bought precious time for the rest of the Black Fleet, time they would use to strike at the heart of the Empire's occupation. And somewhere in the void between Saturn and Earth, the Black Fleet continued its desperate journey, carrying with it humanity's last hope for freedom. Aboard the Eternal Verdict. Admiral Reyna Lockhart stood before the massive viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath her. From this height, it looked peaceful, untouched, as if the past 15 years of Imperial occupation had left no mark on its blue-green surface. But Reyna knew better. She had seen the changes firsthand, the Imperial processing facilities that scarred once pristine landscapes, the crowded urban centers where humans lived under constant surveillance, the re-education camps where those who resisted were sent to have their minds adjusted by the seed. She told herself it was necessary, that humans needed guidance, control, protection from their own worst instincts. The Empire had brought order to a chaotic planet, ended wars, cured diseases, extended lifespans. What was freedom compared to such benefits? Yet somewhere deep inside, in a place the seed had never quite reached, a voice whispered that she had betrayed everything she once stood for, everything she and Marcus had fought to protect. Marcus. The thought of him still brought a mixture of emotions that the seed couldn't fully suppress. They had been more than colleagues, more than friends. Once, they had planned a future together. A future cut short when the Empire arrived and choices had to be made. Her contemplation was interrupted by the approach of Judicator Orin. The tall, gaunt representative of the Empire's ruling council moved with unnatural grace, his robes flowing around him like liquid shadow. "Admiral," he greeted her, his voice a dry whisper. "You seem troubled." Reyna straightened, composing her features into a neutral expression. "Not troubled. Judicator, merely contemplative. Earth's formal surrender is a significant moment." Orin's lips curled in what might have been a smile on a human face, but on his looked more like a grimace. "Indeed. Another world brought into the embrace of the Empire. Thanks in no small part to your efforts." "I merely did my duty," Reyna replied automatically. "Of course." Orin moved to stand beside her at the viewport. "However, there is a matter requiring your attention. We have lost contact with the scout force sent to Saturn's moon Enceladus." Reyna's pulse quickened, though she maintained her composure. "Interference from the rings, perhaps." "Perhaps," Orin conceded, though his tone suggested he believed otherwise. "Or perhaps your former colleague has finally decided to emerge from hiding." "General Carson is dead," Reyna stated flatly. "He died in the Mars Rebellion 7 years ago." "So the official record states," Orin agreed. "Yet our intelligence suggests otherwise. There have been whispers of a fleet being assembled beyond our sensor range. A Black Fleet, they call it." Reyna kept her expression carefully neutral, even as her mind raced. A Black Fleet. Was it possible Marcus had survived all these years, gathering forces in secret? "If such a fleet exists," she said carefully, It poses no significant threat to Imperial control. Earth's military capabilities were dismantled years ago. Nevertheless, Orin insisted, I want all Imperial forces in the system on high alert. If Carson lives, he will be coming for Earth, and for you, Admiral. With that ominous statement, the Judicator departed, leaving Reyna alone with her thoughts once more. She turned back to the viewport, but now Earth's serene appearance seemed like a facade, hiding the tension building across the solar system. If Marcus was alive, if he had somehow assembled a fleet capable of challenging the Empire, what would he think of her now? Would he see the loyal officer serving a greater cause? Or would he see only betrayal? And more troubling still, what would she do when faced with him again? Her comm unit chimed, pulling her from these dangerous thoughts. Admiral, came the voice of her first officer. We're receiving reports of unauthorized vessels approaching from the outer system. Configuration suggests Earth military, but no such fleet should exist. Reyna closed her eyes briefly. So it was true. Marcus was alive, and he was coming. Sound general quarters, she ordered. Bring all weapon systems online and deploy the fleet in defensive formation around Earth. I want the eternal verdict moved to the rear echelon. Yes, Admiral, and shall we inform Earth's governments? Reyna hesitated. The puppet leaders installed on Earth would panic if they knew a rebel fleet was approaching. That panic could spread, potentially disrupting the carefully maintained order. No, she decided, they have no need to know until the situation is resolved. This is an Imperial matter. As she made her way to the command center, Reyna found her thoughts turning again to Marcus. What was his plan? He must know he couldn't win a direct confrontation with the Imperial fleet. The eternal verdict. Alone outgunned anything humans could have assembled in secret. Unless a cold realization struck her. The seed research facility on Mars had reported a breach 7 months ago. Data had been stolen, data about the seed's design and function. At the time, she had dismissed it as industrial espionage. But what if it had been something more? What if Marcus had found a way to counter the seed? She quickened her pace. If that was his plan to free Earth's leaders from Imperial control, then the entire occupation could be at risk. 15 years of careful manipulation undone in an instant. The command center was a hive of activity when she arrived. Officers moved efficiently between stations, preparing the ship and the fleet for battle. Displays showed the approaching Black Fleet, 26 ships in formation, moving at high speed toward Earth. Status report, Reyna demanded. The unauthorized fleet has ignored hails and continues to approach. Her first officer reported. They will be within weapons range in approximately 3 hours. A composition? Mixed. Older Earth military vessels, some modified civilian craft. Nothing that should concern us individually, but together. He trailed off. Together they represent the largest human military force since the occupation began. Reyna finished for him. Deploy additional ships to reinforce our forward positions. I want a 3-layer defense grid between that fleet and Earth. As her orders were carried out, Reyna studied the tactical display more closely. The Black Fleet was maintaining a tight formation, suggesting coordinated command, Marcus's influence, no doubt. But one ship was missing from the formation. Where is their flagship? She asked. There should be a heavy cruiser leading them. Her tactical officer checked the data. No sign of a command vessel. Admiral. Intelligence from the scout force indicated a ship called the Defiance was leading the rebels. But it's not present in this formation. Reyna's brow furrowed. Had Marcus split his forces, or, the thought came unbidden, had he already fallen in some earlier engagement? Continue monitoring, she ordered, and prepare my shuttle when I'm going to inspect the forward defenses personally. Her first officer looked surprised. "Admiral, is that wise with an enemy force approaching?" "The Black Fleet is still hours away," Reyna replied. "And I need to ensure our captains understand the importance of this engagement." What she didn't say was that she needed to see the Black Fleet with her own eyes, needed to confirm whether Marcus was leading it or not. The seed might control much of her mind, but it couldn't erase the connection she had once shared with him. If he was out there, she would know, as her shuttle departed the eternal verdict. Reyna gazed out at the Imperial fleet assembled to defend Earth. Over 100 ships of various classes, from massive destroyers to nimble interceptors, all positioned to annihilate the approaching rebels. It should have been an inspiring sight, the might of the Empire on display. Instead, Reyna felt a curious emptiness. This wasn't the future she had envisioned when she first put on a uniform. She had wanted to protect Earth, to explore the stars, to represent humanity's best qualities. Now she commanded an occupying force, keeping her own people subjugated on behalf of alien masters. The seed's influence pushed back against these thoughts, reminding her of her duty, of the order and progress the Empire had brought. But for the first time in years, Reyna found herself questioning those imperatives. What if Marcus was right? What if humanity's freedom was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds? Her shuttle docked with the command ship of the forward defense line, and Reyna pushed these dangerous thoughts aside. She had a duty to perform. The Black Fleet had to be stopped, regardless of who commanded it. But as she moved through the Imperial vessel, issuing orders and reviewing battle plans, a part of her hoped that somehow, against all logic and probability, Marcus would find a way to succeed. Because if he did, if he could break the Empire's hold on Earth, then perhaps he could break its hold on her as well. Lieutenant Braddock stood on the bridge of the Retribution, now the lead ship of the Black Fleet. Around her, the crew worked with grim determination, knowing they were heading toward a battle they were unlikely to survive. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of command that had been thrust upon her. "All ships maintaining formation," came the response. "Earth's defensive fleet is deploying to intercept. Initial count shows over 100 Imperial vessels." Braddock nodded, studying the tactical display. The odds were even worse than they had anticipated. With the loss of the Defiance and General Carson, morale had taken a hit as well. But they were committed now. There was no turning back. "What about the seed weapons?" she asked, turning to Dr. Hammond, who had transferred to the Retribution along with her. The scientist looked up from his console, his face haggard. "The devices are ready. But without the Defiance's launch systems, we'll need to get much closer to deploy them effectively." "How close?" Hammond hesitated. "Ideally, within Earth's upper atmosphere, the dispersal pattern requires a gravitational anchor to achieve maximum spread." Braddock suppressed a grimace. To reach Earth's atmosphere, they would have to break through the entire Imperial fleet, a near impossible task. "And the volunteers?" she asked quietly. "Prepared," Hammond replied simply, the weight of what that meant hanging in the air between them. 30 men and women had volunteered to sacrifice not just their lives but their very minds to activate the seed weapons. They would endure unimaginable agony as their neural pathways were rewritten, becoming living conduits for the counter-seed signal. It was a terrible price to pay, but they had all agreed willingly, knowing what was at stake. "Then we proceed as planned." Braddock decided to signal the fleet to prepare for combat operations. Maximum speed toward Earth. We punch through their line and deploy the weapons. As the Black Fleet accelerated toward its destiny, Braddock thought of Carson. He had known this mission might be suicidal, yet he had never wavered. Now it fell to her to see it through, to ensure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. The Imperial fleet grew larger on their sensors, a wall of ships between them and Earth. Braddock could almost feel the weight of their weapons locks as the distance closed. "Enemy vessels powering weapons," reported the tactical officer. "They're targeting our lead ships." "Evasive maneuvers," Braddock ordered. "Deploy countermeasures and return fire. Focus on creating a gap in their line. We need a clear path to Earth." The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire as the battle began in earnest. Imperial energy beams lanced out, striking several Black Fleet vessels and inflicting heavy damage. The rebels responded with missile salvos and their own energy weapons, scoring hits against the Imperial shields but causing minimal damage. "We're outgunned," Commander Jackson stated grimly as the Retribution shook from a near miss. "At this rate, we won't reach Earth's atmosphere." Braddock knew he was right. The Imperial fleet was too strong, too numerous. They needed a new strategy. "What if we didn't have to reach the atmosphere?" she asked suddenly, turning to Hammond. "What if we detonated the seed weapons here in space?" The scientist frowned. "The dispersal would be much less effective. Instead of affecting the entire planet, we might only impact a small region. But it would still work. It would still free some of Earth's leaders from Imperial control." Hammond considered. "Yes, but—" "That's all we need," Braddock cut him off. "We don't need to free everyone at once. We just need to create enough chaos to disrupt the Empire's control temporarily." She turned back to Jackson. "New plan. We target the Eternal Verdict directly. All ships, all weapons. We get close enough to detonate the seed weapons in proximity to their command ship." Jackson nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. "If we can disrupt their command structure, even temporarily, it gives Earth a chance," Braddock finished. "Signal the fleet. All ships to converge on the Eternal Verdict. Nothing else matters." The Black Fleet adjusted its approach. 26 ships moving as one toward a single target, the massive Imperial flagship hanging in orbit above Earth. The Imperial fleet responded, shifting to protect their command vessel. But the sudden change in tactics had created momentary confusion. "We have an opening," the tactical officer reported. "Several Black Fleet ships are breaking through the defensive line." Braddock nodded grimly. "Press the advantage. All weapons. Continuous fire. We need to draw their attention away from the ships carrying the seed weapons." The battle intensified as the Black Fleet drove toward its target with suicidal determination. Ships on both sides were hit, damaged, destroyed. The void between Earth and its moon became a graveyard of broken vessels and floating debris. The Retribution took heavy damage as it led the charge, its shields failing under concentrated Imperial fire. Sections of the ship were breached, exposed to vacuum, but still it pressed on. "Status of the seed weapon ships?" Braddock demanded, holding onto her command station as the deck shuddered beneath her. "3 have been destroyed," came the grim reply. 5 are still operational and closing on the target. "And the Eternal Verdict?" "Shields at approximately 70%. They're moving deeper into Earth's orbit, trying to put distance between us." Braddock studied the tactical display, calculating distances and trajectories. They weren't going to make it, not all of them, but perhaps enough would get through. "Signal the remaining seed ships," she ordered. "Begin activation sequence." Across 5 vessels, 30 volunteers prepared for their final act. The counterseed devices were activated, beginning the process that would rewrite their neural patterns, transforming their minds into conduits for the signal that could free Earth. Aboard one such ship, the Redemption. A young officer named Maya Chen closed her eyes as the device connected to her neural implant. Pain beyond imagining coursed through her body as her consciousness was systematically dismantled and reconstructed. But even as her identity began to dissolve, She held on to one thought. Earth would be free. The Redemption and its sister ships accelerated toward the eternal verdict, pushing their engines beyond safety limits. Imperial weapons fire intensified, destroying 2 more of the siege ships before they could reach their target. But 3 remained, closing inexorably on the Imperial flagship. Aboard the Eternal Verdict, alarms blared as the threat was recognized. "3 enemy vessels on collision course," reported an Imperial officer. "They're not responding to weapons fire." Reyna, who had returned to her flagship when the battle began, stared at the tactical display in growing horror. She recognized the suicide run for what it was, but what she couldn't understand was why these ships were emitting strange energy signatures unlike anything in the Imperial database. "Maximum firepower on those vessels," she ordered. "They must not reach us." But it was too late. The first of the siege ships, the Redemption, was hit by multiple energy beams, its hull disintegrating under the assault. Yet even as it broke apart, the seed device at its core activated fully, Maya's consciousness serving as the trigger. A wave of energy unlike anything seen before erupted from the dying ship, washing over the Eternal Verdict and several nearby vessels. It wasn't destructive in the conventional sense. It didn't damage hulls or overload systems. Instead, it targeted minds. Across the Imperial flagship, humans who had been subjected to the Empire's seed suddenly found their conditioning disrupted. Confusion gave way to clarity as the false loyalties implanted by the Empire were temporarily neutralized. And no one was more affected than Admiral Reyna Lakak. She stumbled, gripping the command console as years of conditioning were stripped away in an instant. Memories flooded back, not the sanitized versions the seed had left her with, but the raw truth of what had happened. The Empire hadn't come as friends. They had come as conquerors, using the seed to subvert Earth's leaders from within. She hadn't chosen to join them. She had been taken, her mind altered, her loyalty forced. And Marcus hadn't abandoned her. He had tried to save her, tried to break the Empire's control over her mind. She had been the one to betray him, to hunt him, to force him into hiding. "Admiral," one of her officers approached, concern evident in his voice. "Are you unwell?" Reyna straightened, her mind racing. Around her, she could see other human officers experiencing similar revelations, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror as they realized what had been done to them. But the non-human Imperial officers remained unaffected, watching with growing suspicion. "Security alert," the Seraphian first officer barked suddenly. "Restrain all human personnel. They appear to be under some form of attack." Reyna's hand moved to her sidearm. "Belay that order," she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that had nothing to do with her Imperial rank and everything to do with who she truly was. "This ship is now under my command." The Seraphian's eyes narrowed. "You are compromised, Admiral. Step down or be removed." In answer, Reyna drew her weapon and fired, striking the Seraphian squarely in the chest. As he fell, she turned to the human officers on the bridge. "The Empire has controlled our minds for 15 years, she declared. "They've made us betray our own people, our own planet, but no more. Today we take back what's ours." Some hesitated, the remnants of Imperial conditioning still strong. Others stepped forward immediately, drawing their own weapons as Imperial security forces rushed onto the bridge. A firefight erupted, short but brutal. When it ended, Reyna stood among the bodies of fallen Imperial officers, surrounded by a core of human crew members who had chosen to follow her. "Secure the ship," she ordered. "Neutralize any resistance and open a channel to the Black Fleet." Minutes later, Lieutenant Braddock stared in disbelief at the image on the Retribution's main screen. Admiral Reyna Lakak, the Empire's most decorated human officer, was addressing her directly. "Lieutenant," Reyna began, her voice steady despite the chaos visible on the bridge behind her. "The seed weapons were successful. Many of us are free from Imperial control, at least temporarily." Braddock's expression remained skeptical. "Admiral Lockhart, General Carson believed you were lost to the Empire's influence years ago." Pain flashed across Reyna's face at the mention of Carson. "Marcus, is he with you?" "General Carson gave his life to ensure the Black Fleet reached Earth," Braddock replied coldly. "His sacrifice allowed us to deploy the seed weapons that freed you." Reyna closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news of Marcus's death. When she opened them again, there was a fierce determination in her gaze. "Then we will ensure his sacrifice was not in vain," she declared. "I've taken control of the eternal verdict, but it won't last. The counterseed effect is temporary, and Imperial reinforcements will arrive when they realize what's happened." "What are you proposing?" Braddock asked cautiously. "A coordinated strike against the Empire's control infrastructure on Earth," Reyna replied. "With the Eternal Verdict's weapons and your remaining seed devices, we can target the primary seed distribution centers. If we destroy them before the Empire regains control, Earth has a chance at genuine rebellion." Braddock exchanged glances with Commander Jackson and Dr. Hammond. It was a desperate plan. But then, desperation had defined the Black Fleet from the beginning. "We're with you, Admiral," she decided, "but be warned. We have only 2 seed devices remaining, and they require living hosts to activate." "I understand the cost," Reyna said grimly. "And I volunteer to be one of those hosts." Shocked silence met her declaration. "Admiral," Braddock began, "the neural rewriting process is—" "I know exactly what it is," Reyna cut her off. "I helped develop it for the Empire. God help me, and it's time I paid for that sin." The decision was made. The remaining Black Fleet vessels joined with the Eternal Verdict, forming a new, unified force. Together, they targeted the 3 primary seed distribution centers on Earth. Facilities disguised as medical research complexes but actually serving as the nerve centers of the Empire's control network. The Eternal Verdict's main batteries fired first, overwhelming the defensive shields around the facilities and creating openings for the seed weapons to be deployed. Reyna herself boarded one of the 2 remaining seed ships, connecting herself to the device that would use her mind as a conduit for the counterseed signal. As the neural rewriting began, she found herself thinking of Marcus. He had never given up on humanity, never surrendered to despair even when the odds seemed insurmountable. In her final moments of clarity, she hoped he would be proud of her choice. The seed ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, each targeting a different distribution center. The pain was beyond description as Reyna's consciousness was rewritten, her identity dissolving into the signal that would break the Empire's hold on Earth. But even as her sense of self began to fade, she activated the ship's communication system one last time. "People of Earth," she began, her voice strained but determined. "For 15 years, the Empire has controlled your minds, manipulated your leaders, and stripped away your freedom. Today, that control ends. Today, humanity stands up and declares, 'We will not kneel.'" The seed ships reached their targets, releasing pulses of energy that washed over the distribution centers and spread outward, affecting millions of humans who had been subjected to the Empire's influence. Across Earth, people who had accepted Imperial rule without question suddenly found themselves questioning everything. Confusion gave way to anger, and anger to action, as spontaneous uprisings erupted in cities worldwide. Imperial officials and their human collaborators found themselves surrounded by crowds demanding answers, demanding freedom. Aboard the Retribution, Lieutenant Braddock watched the cascade of events with a mixture of hope and sorrow. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, but at a terrible cost. The Black Fleet was decimated, General Carson was dead, and Admiral Locke had sacrificed herself to free the very people she had once helped enslave. "It's not over," Commander Jackson warned as they observed reports coming in from Earth. "The Empire still controls most of the solar system. They'll send reinforcements as soon as they realize what's happened." "I know," Braddock acknowledged. "This isn't the end of the war. It's just the beginning of Earth's real resistance." She turned to face what remained of her crew. General Carson knew that. He didn't expect us to win in a single battle. He expected us to light a spark that would grow into a flame. She moved to the communication console. "It's time to release the General's final message. Let everyone hear why we fought, why we died, and why they must continue the fight." Across Earth and throughout the solar system, communication channels were flooded with Carson's recorded words. "Humans do not kneel, not to tyrants, not to conquerors, and certainly not to an empire that demands our submission through mind control and threats." His face, his voice, became symbols of the resistance that spread like wildfire in the wake of the Counterseed's release. The Empire's carefully constructed control system, built over 15 years of patient manipulation, began to crumble in a matter of hours. It wasn't a complete victory. The Empire still held vast military power, and many humans remained under their influence. The Counterseed's effects would fade for some, and Imperial reinforcements would eventually arrive to reassert control. But something had changed fundamentally. The illusion of benevolent partnership had been shattered. The truth of the Empire's methods had been exposed, and most importantly, humanity had proven, to themselves and to the Empire, that they would not surrender without a fight. In the days that followed, Lieutenant Braddock and the surviving members of the Black Fleet joined with freed Earth military units to establish a genuine resistance movement. They salvaged what they could from the battle, including data from the Eternal Verdict's computers that revealed Imperial weaknesses and strategies. The Empire would return in force. Of that there was no doubt. But they would find a different Earth waiting for them. An Earth that had tasted freedom again and remembered its worth. As Braddock stood on the bridge of the Retribution, now serving as the flagship of Earth's nascent defense force, she remembered Carson's words. "We rise, we fight, we survive, and we never ever kneel." The Black Fleet had roared into battle against impossible odds. And though many had fallen, their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Empire had demanded Earth's surrender, but humanity had answered with defiance. And that defiance would echo across the stars. A reminder that some things could not be conquered, some spirits could not be broken, and some species would never kneel, no matter the cost. The war for Earth's freedom had only just begun.